Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we're doing something a bit different. Usually we look at a specific event or a scientific breakthrough, but today we're looking at the actual machinery underneath society itself.
Right, the operating system.
Exactly. If you're the kind of learner who looks around at the modern world, at politics, HR departments, the dating scene, and feels like the rules of the game have fundamentally changed without anyone sending you the memo, well, this is the deep dive you've been waiting for.
Yeah, we're stripping away that polite veneer to look at a diagnostic tool that claims to explain all of this chaos.
And before we crack this open, I have one crucial job to do. If you appreciate us finding these kinds of unfiltered, hard-hitting sources that you definitely won't see on the nightly news, you need to hit that like and subscribe button right now.
It really is essential for us.
It helps the algorithm find the men who need this information, and it keeps the lights on for us. So, click it. Done. All right. Today we're reviewing an ultra-long, incisive ebook called BPD And Deceitful Women's Nature on a Spectrum by Conrad Reicher.
And I want to be clear right up front. We're going to cover the core arguments, but this book is dense. It's a massive, fascinating look at the history of our institutions before they were captured by feminists and Marxists.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. So if you want the full field manual, and if you're part of the red-pilled manosphere or a men's rights activist, this is basically armor. You need to go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books and buy the ebook yourself. We can really only scratch the surface here.
And you should also follow the author, Conrad Reicher, at his Substack. The handle is @ConradReicher. So let's get into the hook here. When I first saw the title, I thought, okay, is this just dating advice? Is this about bad breakups?
Right, that's the obvious first thought.
But reading through the source material, Reicher is aiming at something much, much bigger, isn't he?
Oh, it's monumental. Reicher's central premise is that we aren't just dealing with a few difficult individuals in our personal lives. He argues that Western civilization itself, our institutions, governments, universities, has been fully captured by a specific psychological profile.
A psychological takeover.
Yes, he calls it the repressed maternal archetype, combined with traits from the borderline personality disorder spectrum.
That is a massive claim. I mean, usually when we talk about borderline personality disorder or BPD, we're talking about a clinical diagnosis for one specific patient. Reicher is saying an entire society can run on a personality disorder.
Essentially, yes.
Probably.
The argument is that behaviors we use to classify as clinical issues, like emotional instability, intense mood swings, a frantic fear of abandonment, identity disturbance, they aren't treated as problems to be solved anymore.
They're the norm.
They've become the operating system of our politics, our media, and our legal system.
Okay, let's unpack this, because operating system implies it's running everything in the background. Does he have data to back up this link between the disorder and the demographic?
He starts with the clinical data. Reicher points to the DSM-5, which is the Bible for psychiatric diagnosis. It reports that about 75% of diagnosed BPD patients are women.
75%.
Right, but the book goes a step further. It cites research suggesting that up to 80% of women exhibit specific traits on that spectrum, even if they aren't clinically diagnosed.
So we're talking about things like emotional volatility and, what's the term, splitting?
Splitting, yes, where people are painted as all good or all bad, no nuance.
So the argument is that these traits are common, but in the past, society had checks and balances for them.
Exactly. The source argues that these traits used to be managed, but now they're incentivized. Culture actually rewards them. And to understand how that works, we have to look at the mechanism he describes, called the Cartman drama triangle.
The drama triangle. I've heard of this in therapy contexts, but for the listeners who haven't, how does this actually spin in the real world?
It's a model of dysfunctional social interaction with three roles: the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. In a healthy interaction, you deal with facts. In the drama triangle, you deal strictly with roles.
And Reicher argues this is the default script now.
It's the default for modern politics and law.
Give me a concrete example. How does this play out for a guy listening right now?
Okay, imagine a standard workplace scenario. A woman claims she feels unsafe or offended by a comment. She immediately steps into the victim role.
Okay.
Now, the way the triangle works, the moment there is a victim, the system, whether that's HR, the state, or just society in general, is compelled to step in as the rescuer. They have to be the hero.
And a hero needs a villain.
Precisely. You cannot be a rescuer unless there is someone to fight. So the man involved, the one who made the comment, is automatically cast as the persecutor.
Wow.
It doesn't matter what he actually said, doesn't matter what his intent was. The script requires him to be the villain so the other two can play their parts.
So the accusation itself acts as the verdict.
Riker argues that in this system, due process is an obstacle to the drama. If you stop to ask for facts, you're invalidating the victim's lived experience, which just makes you a persecutor too.
If you're a man in this system, you're the designated villain in a script you didn't even write. That sounds incredibly difficult to navigate because logic just doesn't work against a script like that.
Doesn't work at all.
And the author connects this to something he calls the gossip grid. This moves the theory from personal relationships into actual institutions. How did this happen?
This is where the history of our institutions comes into play, before the ideological capture. Riker traces this behavior right back to the schoolyard. He shares a really vivid anecdote about a 6th grade feelings journal.
A feelings journal.
Yeah, it was a notebook passed around a group of girls. They used it to document their negative feelings about a specific classmate. It wasn't about what the classmate actually did. It was entirely about how they felt about her.
So they used it to exile her from the group.
Exactly. Riker calls this relational aggression. It's warfare, but it's psychological, not physical.
I think every guy listening has seen that happen in school. It's the Whisper Network. But Riker's point is that this didn't stay in the 6th grade.
Right, it scales up. The book argues that as women entered institutions like HR departments, universities, and government agencies, they brought this social strategy with them.
It became institutionalized.
Yes, and Riker cites a Harvard Business School study stating that women are 3 times more likely to spread unverified rumors than men.
Wait, pause on that. 3 times more likely.
3 times. That is a massive statistical difference.
That suggests it's not just a bad habit, it's a primary strategy. So he's saying this behavior, which works to police a social clique, is now being used to manage corporate structures and legal systems.
That is the core of the gossip grid concept. When that behavior becomes institutionalized, you get what Riker calls the weaponization of safety. It shifts the entire standard of truth.
How so?
The question stops being, did this event actually happen? And becomes, how did this event make you feel?
He gives a really specific example of this that I want to drill into. The story about the professor at the University of Oregon. Walk us through what happened there.
That story is chilling because it highlights how the institution itself has been captured. So you have a tenured professor in an academic setting. He states a pretty basic biological concept. Men and women are biologically different.
Which is just a fact.
Right. Now, at a traditional university 50 years ago, if a student disagreed, they would debate him. They'd bring data, they'd write a paper.
That's the whole point of a university, the marketplace of ideas.
Exactly. But that didn't happen here. Instead, the drama triangle activated. A complaint was filed, but it wasn't about factual inaccuracy. The complaint was that his statement caused emotional distress.
So the fact caused distress, and the distress was treated as a fireable offense.
The university fired him. And Riker emphasizes this. The institution, acting as the rescuer, didn't look for truth. It looked to alleviate the distress of the victim.
The firing wasn't a punishment for a lie. It was a sacrifice to restore emotional equilibrium.
Precisely. And Riker links this to the fact that 73% of HR roles are held by women.
73%, that's a monopoly.
Yes. The argument is that this demographic shift created a workplace culture where emotional openness is valued over competence, and where saying, I feel unsafe, is the ultimate trump card that overrides any logic or tenure.
It's like the gossip grid became the legal code. But let's pivot to the political side. The outline mentions the repressed mother archetype. Riker talks about Marxists and feminists capturing institutions, but he frames it psychologically. What does a mother have to do with the state?
This is one of the most provocative parts of his theory regarding the political left. Riker argues that modern leftism isn't really an ideology in the traditional political sense.
But what is it then?
He calls it, and this is a direct quote, BPD with a PhD.
BPD with a PhD. That is definitely going to stick with people.
It connects back to the maternal instinct. Riker's theory is that the maternal instinct is a powerful biological force designed to protect and nurture children.
Makes sense.
But, he argues, when that instinct is not directed at raising one's own children, either because it is repressed, denied, or displaced, it doesn't just vanish, it metastasizes. It turns outward and projects onto the state.
So instead of mothering a family, you try to mother the entire population.
Exactly. But Riker argues it becomes the terrible mother archetype. The overbearing mother who infantilizes everyone. It demands total dependence. If the state is the mother, then the citizens are the babies.
And babies don't have autonomy, they just have needs.
Right. Babies don't have rights. They have needs that must be met by the mother. Riker uses Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, as a prime case study here.
What does she do specifically?
He points to her language. She has literally referred to immigrants as our babies and speaks frequently about the need to mother the globe.
It's a very specific type of language. It's not governing citizens, it's caretaking.
And that's the danger Riker points out. The terrible mother state demands that the world conform to her emotional states rather than reality.
So if reality is harsh,
If there are borders or economic scarcity or biological differences, the terrible mother tries to ban reality to protect the babies from feeling bad.
which brings us to the war on men. Because if the state is the mother and the citizens are babies, where do adult men fit in?
They don't. Or rather, they are the threat. Riker describes a fundamental conflict between logic and emotion. Men, generally speaking, utilize logic, structure, and facts to navigate the world.
Well, the current captured culture utilizes emotion, feelings, and consensus.
Exactly. And when those two collide, the system engages in what Riker calls tone policing.
This is a huge concept for anyone listening who has felt completely crazy in an argument.
It is. If a man states a fact, a hard, cold fact, but he doesn't wrap it in soothing emotional language, the system views his statement as literal violence.
But you can be factually right, but if your tone isn't soft enough, you're wrong.
You're not just wrong, you're toxic. You're seen as aggressive. Riker points out the double standard here. High emotional volatility in women is often framed as authentic or passionate.
Right, she's speaking her truth.
Exactly. But stoicism in men keeping your cool, sticking to the facts, is labeled repressed or emotionally unavailable.
There was a story in the source material that really drove this home for me. The custody battle in British Columbia. It was genuinely heartbreaking to read. Can you share the details of that case?
That case is a perfect example of the system punishing male stoicism. You had a father fighting for access to his children. By all accounts, he was a stable, providing father, no history of abuse.
But he lost.
He lost. He was denied access entirely.
And the judge's reasoning, this is the crazy part.
The judge explicitly stated that the father didn't cry enough in court
Wow.
because he maintained his composure, because he was trying to be strong for his kids and respect the court. The system viewed him as suspicious. They couldn't read his emotions, so they assumed he was cold or unfeeling.
He was punished for being a rock, for acting like a man.
He was punished for not playing the game of emotional performance. And Riker notes that this performance pays. It's not just in family court. He cites a Harvard study showing that female politicians who cry get a 37% bump in donations.
37%, just for crying.
Yes, tears are literally a fiscal instrument in this economy. If a man cries, he looks weak. If a woman cries, she gets funded. Riker argues this is a rigged economy of emotion that men simply cannot compete in.
That explains so much of what we see on the news and in our own lives. So, we have a system that pathologizes logic, rewards emotional instability, and uses the state to enforce it. It sounds pretty bleak. Does Riker offer a way out for the guys listening, or is this just a catalog of doom?
No, he definitely offers a solution. He calls it the Red Pill Survival Guide. But the solution isn't to fight fire with fire. You cannot fight emotion with more emotion. You will lose that game every time.
So what do you do? Because you can't just surrender.
You fight with structure and logic. Riker calls for a return to the trivium.
Trivium, that's an old concept, classical education, right?
Very old. It's the three-part foundation of critical thinking: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Riker argues that men need to reclaim the ability to think clearly, analyze arguments, and speak precisely.
So if the world is drowning in emotional chaos, your greatest weapon is coherence.
Coherence is a weapon, yes.
Yeah.
He also talks about a movement he calls men of the hearth. These are men who are simply checking out of the rigged game. They aren't playing the drama triangle anymore.
He highlights the men's awakening in South Korea, right?
Yes, and the numbers are staggering. He reports that the movement there has around 500,000 members.
500,000 men.
500,000 men who are deciding to opt out of the traditional expectations because the deal is bad. He also mentions men in Poland using Article 4 of their constitution to protect their families.
Essentially building parallel systems based on competence and truth rather than emotional validation.
Exactly. The strategy is to stop apologizing. Never apologize for existing. That's one of his key rules. Do not validate emotional manipulation.
So if someone tries to pull you into the drama triangle, if they play the victim,
You refuse the role of persecutor or rescuer.
Yeah.
You just step outside the script.
there is also a tech solution mentioned in the book, an app.
The Truth Shield app. Riker uses this anecdote about an app that flags logical fallacies in real time during an argument. It acts as a filter. It tells you this is a straw man, this is an appeal to emotion, this is an ad hominem attack.
It's like augmented reality for logic.
Exactly. And whether you use an app or just train your brain to do it, the goal is the same. When the emotional storm hits, you need a filter that says, this is not reality.
That's vital.
Riker's message is that they cannot kill the truth. They cannot extinguish logic. The goal isn't necessarily to change the system overnight. It's to make yourself immune to its manipulation.
That is a powerful place to land. It's about choosing coherence over chaos. If you're listening to this and you feel like you just got the cheat code to the Matrix, you really need to go deeper.
We've covered the outline, but the book contains so much more detail on the history of how these institutions were captured and the specific daily strategies you need.
Absolutely. You need to read the full text. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books right now and buy the ebook BPD and Deceitful Women's Nature on a Spectrum. That is where you get the full armor.
And for the ongoing analysis, because this culture war definitely isn't over, you need to follow the author, Conrad Riker. Find him at Conrad Riker on Substack. Join the counter network he's building there.
Riker's final sentiment in the book really stuck with me. He says, "You see now, and because you see, you cannot unsee."
Once you recognize the pattern, the triangle, the gossip grid, the tone policing, you really can't go back to sleep.
You can't. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. If the institutional capture is as complete as Riker outlines, if the gossip grid and the drama triangle are the very foundation of modern HR, law, and government, is reforming the system even mathematically possible? Or is the only logical move left for men to fully detach and build an entirely separate parallel society from the ground up? Think about that.
It's the ultimate question.
And that is the point of a deep dive, to wake you up. If you want more content like this, content that respects your intelligence, explores the actual history of our institutions, and doesn't sugarcoat reality, make sure to like and subscribe right now. Do it to support the channel and do it to keep this kind of information flowing. We'll see you on the next one.